Can anyone recall what did we discuss in terms of this very idea of empathy? Have we talked about empathy before? Have we talked about empathy before? And if yes, what exactly does the term empathy mean? What exactly does the term empathy mean? Tell me. Tell me. Have we talked about empathy before? Have we talked about when we can feel someone else's pain? That is what empathy is. Can we say that integrity is ideal? No, not integrity is not idealistic. होता है, लोगों में होता है. It means to think about a person by keeping oneself at her or his position. Yes. Putting oneself in others' shoes. Yes. That is exactly what the term empathy means. Okay. The ability to feel what others are feeling. Okay. Mohit, it is not the ability to imagine. Rather, it is the ability to feel what others are feeling. It is the ability to do what? It is the ability to feel what others are feeling. That means the ability of an individual. What is empathy? Empathy can be described as an ability. An ability of an individual. An ability of an individual to the ability of an individual to do what? The ability of an individual to take perspective of others. What is it? It is the ability of an individual to take perspective of others. That is what the very term empathy means. And that is the very term empathy means. The ability to put yourself in others' shoes, or the ability to take perspective of others, to understand what they are feeling and to feel what they are feeling. That is basically what the concept of empathy is. Okay? That is what the concept of empathy is. Now, just write something here. I'm just giving you details related to empathy. Please write down. Empathy. Empathy is derived from a German word. Is derived from a German word. From a German word. Meaning feeling into. Meaning feeling into. Feeling into. Full stop. It refers to the ability. It refers to the ability to imagine oneself. Ability to imagine oneself. Imagine oneself in another's place. In another's place. And understand the other's feelings. The other's feelings. Comma. Desires. Ideas. And actions. Full stop. Empathy is about being able to accurately hear out and understand. Accurately hear out and understand the thoughts, comma, feeling and concerns of others. Even when they are not made explicit. Even when they are not made explicit. Full stop. It means in order to empathize with others. In order to empathize with others, we need to be aware. It means in order to empathize with others, we need to be aware. We need to be aware of what we are feeling. To acknowledge, comma, identify, and accept our feelings. Full stop. It requires personal involvement of an individual, comma, one needs to be an effective communicator. One needs to be an effective communicator. Full stop. Full stop. Okay. So this is basically what the idea of empathy is. I have just detailed what we already know. We have seen here that empathy is about what? Empathy is about putting yourself in others' shoes. It is about feeling what others are feeling. It is about it is about understanding what their problems are, what their concerns are, what their feelings are, even if they're not made explicit. Empathy, if you have empathy, you don't need others to tell you what they are feeling. You don't need others to tell you what they are feeling. It is something which will come. It is something which is going to come, despite the fact that they have not made those things explicit. You see the expression of an individual. You see the expression of an individual. You understand what the individual is feeling. You understand what the individual is feeling. You see the body language of an individual. And by just looking at the body language of an individual, you are able to understand what very accurately. You are able to understand what exactly are the feelings that the individual is having. You are able to understand that particular part. That is basically what makes you an individual with empathy. And what you have also written is that empathy, for empathizing with others, you need to recognize your emotions also. It is not just about the emotions of others, because it is about replicating their emotions. That means the emotions that they are feeling, the same emotions you will feel. So it is also about understanding your emotions, acknowledging your emotions. That is basically what empathy is, and that is what you have written. Okay? Now, give a subheading here and write types of empathy. Types of empathy. And empathy can be of two types. Empathy can be of what? Empathy can be of two types. Cognitive empathy and effective empathy. Now, the term cognitive, what exactly does this term mean? I have talked about this term earlier also. So what is the meaning of this term, cognitive? What does this term mean, cognitive? Yes, tell me, what does the term cognitive mean? What does the term cognitive mean? What does the term cognitive mean? Perceptional, based on understanding consciously. Attitudes have what? Attitudes have the component, behavioral component. Okay, so the cognitive, affective, and the behavioral component, the CAB. Okay, this is basically what. No, this is basically what it is. This is basically what the very idea is. Now, at that particular time when I was describing what cognition means, I said it is the belief and opinions that an individual holds. What is it? The beliefs and opinions that the individual holds. That is what the meaning of cognition is. Okay. When we talk about cognitive empathy, what exactly does the cognitive empathy means? So, what is cognitions? We have understood. What is cognitive empathy? Cognitive empathy involves the ability to take perspective of others, or you can say ability to take perspective of others, or perspective taking, ability to take perspective of others, or perspective taking. That is basically what cognitive empathy means. That means it is about the capability to understand the emotions of others. What is it? The capability to understand the emotions of others. Capability to understand the emotions of others. It is what? It is the capability of an individual to understand the emotions of others. What emotions others are with, the capability to understand those emotions. The capability to understand those emotions is basically cognitive empathy. Okay. Now the term effective, not affective, okay. The term effective, which here I'm referring as effective empathy, is also something that we have discussed earlier. The term effective means what? The term effective means the emotions of an individual. Okay, that is what the term effective means. The emotions and the feelings of an individual. That is what the term effective means. Okay, so here when we say the term effective empathy, what does that mean? It means the capability to do what? The capability to feel what others are feeling, or the capability to replicate the sensations that others are having, the feelings that others are having. That is basically what effective empathy is. What is it? I'm writing this here. It refers to the sensations and the feelings we get response to others. In response to what? In response to others' emotions. In response to others' emotions. है ना? Cognitive empathy, effective empathy. ठीक है? I hope you are writing this down. Please write this down. I will explain this again. Don't worry. I will explain both of these ideas again, and you will understand it because I'll be using an example. And with the example, you will understand this. But before that, I would like all of you to write this. Cognitive empathy, effective empathy. The ability to take perspective of others, perspective taking. The capability to understand the emotions that others are undergoing. The capability to understand what emotions others are undergoing. And then comes effective empathy, which refers to what sensations and feelings that we get in response to others' emotions. Now, try and understand both of these ideas. What exactly is meant by them? Try and understand both of this. ठीक है? देखो, जब हम बात करते हैं cognition, what is cognition? The term cognition meaning. The term cognition means the beliefs and opinions that an individual has. यानी जब मैं I have my beliefs, I have my opinions, and I have my own beliefs, I have my opinions. That is my cognition. Cognitive empathy क्या होता है? Cognitive empathy is your capability to do what? Your capability to understand what I believe in. Your capability to understand what my opinions are and why those opinions are. है ना? ये भी important है. Why are those opinions there? The capability of you to understand. First of all, you understand my opinions and you also understand why I am having those opinions which I am having. जो opinions मेरे हैं, वो opinions मेरे क्यों हैं? वो opinions मेरे क्यों हैं? ये समझना, इसे हम cognitive empathy कहते हैं. This is basically what cognitive empathy is. This is basically what cognitive empathy is. Okay? Now, let us try and understand this by an example. Now, suppose there is an individual who goes to the funeral of maybe a friend's relative. So I go to a funeral which is of my friend's relative. Okay? I go there. Now, I go there and I see people around me who are in grief, sorrow. And people around me are in grief. People around me are in sorrow. In fact, a lot of those individuals are even crying. There are a lot of individuals who would be crying there. So I go there, I see my friend, and I see the individual sad, and I also see the individual crying. So the individual has what? In that case, when I understand why that is the case, when I understand it, I understand his or her perspective. I understand why the individual is feeling what he is, or why is it that the individual is in that emotional state. When I understand the reason behind it, and I understand his opinion, his belief, and I understand the reason behind it. That is cognitive empathy. That is what? That is cognitive empathy. And then comes the effective empathy. Effective empathy is what? When I see the individual crying, what happens to me? That is effective empathy. Whether I have the capability to feel what the individual is feeling. And when I see the individual crying and I understand the reasons, I understand his opinion, his perspective, and then do I have the when I have the capability to also feel what he's feeling. That is effective empathy. The sensations and the emotions that the individual is feeling, when I have the capability to feel that within me, that is basically effective empathy. So when I see the individual crying, though the individual whose funeral it is, the individual who has passed away is not my relative. The individual was not related to me. Very likely, I have never met that individual. ऐसा भी हो सकता है that I have never met that individual. Very likely, it is that the individual was it had absolutely nothing related to me. But still, when I see my friend and when I see the individual crying, the friend crying, now because the individual is close to me, now the feelings that I have is the same feeling. That is the feeling of sorrow, the feeling of grief that he had. Now I have the same feelings. That is what we call as effective empathy. Yeah? So this is cognitive empathy and effective empathy. Is it clear? Do that example. Is it clear? Yes or no? Tell me this idea. Is it clear? Yes or no? Having any doubts related to what we have just? Yes, I want all of you to reply. Is this clear?
Yeah.
The types idea, is that clear? Yes or no? Yes or no? So, sir, can one experience both empathy at the same time? Yes, of course. The empathy would involve you experiencing both of it at the same time. If you just have the perspective of others but not the capability to replicate the emotions, that is not empathy. Empathy involves when both of it coexist. Okay, that is basically what empathy. But sir, why their feelings comes to it? It is basically the cognitions. When you have the capability of taking the perspective of others, you have the capability of understanding the opinions, the beliefs of others. That is basically what results into that. When you have the capability, because remember how attitudes, when we talk about cognitions, what our opinions and beliefs are about an attitude object results into the emotions. So when you have the same opinion or you have the capability to take the perspective of others, that will result into the same feelings or emotions that they are feeling. That is why. Okay. Let us move on. Give a subheading here and write empathy versus sympathy. Empathy versus sympathy. So when we see someone crying in the hospital, then we also feel sad. Is it effective empathy? It is is that they both doesn't go hand in hand. There may be relative empathy, but no, that is not possible. Akhil, that is not possible. They coexist. When you have the capability to take perspective of others, when you have the capability to take perspective of others, in that case, you will do what? You will also very likely have the capability to feel what others are feeling. Okay? And IPS should have empathy with criminal bad situations. क्या मतलब है? देखो, having empathy with criminals, ये कैसे possible है? Having empathy with criminals, देखो, criminals जो है वो तो क्राइम कर रहे हैं ना, और देखो जब कोई भी इंडिविजुअल क्राइम करता है तो वो अपने एक्शंस को हमेशा जस्टिफाई कर सकता है. कोई भी इंडिविजुअल अपने एक्शंस को जस्टिफाई कर सकता है. ठीक है, you will see every individual justifying their actions. So in that case, if you take perspective of others, no, in that case, if you take the perspective of that very individual, तब तो फिर इसका मतलब ये हो गया ना कि you are in a way understanding his justification. You are in agreement with his justification. उसका मतलब तो ये हो गया, है ना? तो वो possible है. हाँ, they should have empathy with the victims, not with the criminals, but they should have empathy with the victims and the families that are affected by, the people who get affected by. That is basically who they should have empathy with. Okay? They should have empathy with them. ये important है. Okay. Empathy versus sympathy. Which is more important for a civil servant? Is it empathy? Is it sympathy? What do you think? What do you think? What is more important for a civil servant? Is it empathy? Is it sympathy? Okay, empathy. Most of you are saying empathy. Some of you are also saying both. Empathy is more important because it means feeling others' pains and better decisions we have to understand their situation. Okay, both are important. And some of you believe that empathy is more important. Okay. So let us try and understand this. So let us try and understand, first of all, the meaning and the differences between the two. First, let us understand what both of this means, and then let us understand what are the differences that are there. Okay? Like, if we talk about empathy, we know empathy is about what? Taking perspective of others. It is about what? It is about taking perspective of others. Now, when we say sympathy, so what is sympathy? What is sympathy? Why? When we differentiate both of them, why is empathy different from sympathy? Because the concept of empathy is not about taking perspective of others. It is only the knowledge of someone's emotions. Only the knowledge of what? The knowledge of someone's emotions. It is what? It is the knowledge of someone's emotions. Let me explain this. I will just further take up the same example that I have discussed. I will take that example up further. ठीक है, जैसे मैंने बताया फ्यूनरल की बात की मैंने, तो ये मत सोचना कि सर क्या जो है सुबह सुबह जो किसी के मरने की बात कर रहे हैं, बट क्योंकि इमोशंस की बात कर कुछ प्रैक्टिकल बातें आपको बताऊंगा, इस वजह से वो एग्जांपल लेकर चलूंगा. देखो, empathy is when you go to the individual's house, you see that someone has passed away, you see the pain that the individual is undergoing, है ना? You see the pain and you are able to understand the perspective of the individual, है ना? You are able to do what? You are able to understand the individual's perspective. You are able to understand the individual's perspective. ठीक है? Empathy और sympathy में फर्क ये है that when we talk about sympathy is not understanding, it is just the acknowledgement of or the knowledge of someone's emotions. That means when you know what the individual is undergoing, only the knowledge of it, nothing more. You don't have anything more than that. That is basically what is sympathy. ठीक है? Example से समझते हैं. देखो, I will talk about me and my traditions. वहाँ पे बात करें. तो हमारे में क्या होता है कि अगर किसी इंडिविजुअल someone dies, तो after the 9th day or the 10th day, there are some rituals that are held. Some rituals are held where the individual who has जिसने अग्नि दिया है, यानी who has basically done the जिसे क्रियाक्रम बोलते हैं, तो उसने किया है, तो वो पूरे दिन कुछ रिचुअल्स होते हैं, वो रिचुअल्स फॉलो किए जाते हैं. The 11th day and the 12th day and also the 13th day, but more importantly the 11th day and the 12th day that is there, उसमें रिचुअल्स फॉलो किए जाते हैं. और इवनिंग में, that means after the rituals are over, ठीक है, जब रिचुअल्स खत्म हो जाते हैं, ठीक है, जब रिचुअल्स खत्म हो जाते हैं, तो इवनिंग में भोज होता है. समझते हो भोज क्या है? Everyone understands what is the meaning of this idea of भोज. समझते हो भोज क्या होता है? Yes, do you understand what it is? Yes, who among you understands what the concept of भोज is? भोज, अच्छा, ज्यादातर, हाँ, most of you understand that. For those खाना मिलता है, हाँ, तो for those who don't understand this, तो उसमें क्या होता है basically, जो गांव के लोग हैं and your relatives that are there, they all come and you can say in memory of the individual who has passed away, ठीक है, in memory of the individual who has passed away, you feed them, कभी भी उस पर्टिकुलर खोज में जाओगे जहां पर लोग क्या कह रहे हैं, जहां पर लोग बैठकर साथ में खा रहे हैं और उनकी बातों को सुनोगे, तो आपको समझ में आ जाएगा कि एम्पैथी और सिंपैथी क्या डिफरेंट है, व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस दैट इज देयर। एक तरफ है फैमिली मेंबर्स, ठीक है, who come when suppose someone has passed away and they have the capability of what, they have the capability of understanding the emotions that you are undergoing, and most of the times even what happens is that they share your emotions. That means you feel that you are in sorrow, you are in grief, and the family members that are there, they also are in sorrow, they are also in grief, okay? They are also in sorrow, they are also in grief, okay? They are also in sorrow, they are also in grief. That is basically what, no, that is basically what we call as, no, we can call as empathy. Sympathy क्या होता है जानते हैं? Sympathy ये है कि जब आप और लोगों को देखोगे ना जो उस बोझ में बैठे हैं, so they have absolutely no concerns of your emotions. They have absolutely no concern of your emotions. They are more concerned with the food. It is not to say that they don't know. ये मैं नहीं कहूँगा कि they are not people who, no, they are not people who, no, they don't know this. वो नहीं कहूँगा. They know that the family right now is grieving. They know that they are in sorrow. Why? Because someone has passed away. But they absolutely, no, they absolutely what? They absolutely do not empathize because they are more concerned with the food. तो आप देखोगे वहाँ पर आप बात कर रहे हैं. I have, of course, being in my age, I have been to a number of funerals. जब भी गांव में कुछ ऐसा होता है कि कुछ relatives हैं या कुछ बड़े लोग हैं, if it happens, so you have to go there. तो वहाँ पर I was generally I observed that people are absolutely not concerned with the family, the emotions that are there. They are more concerned with the food that they are eating. So they will comment on the food. अरे ये बढ़िया बना है, ये नहीं, ये उतना अच्छा नहीं बना. अरे जो बनाने वाला है, यानी जिस इंडिविजुअल को हायर किया गया है कि आप खाना बनाओगे, वो कैसा है? इन चीजों पर बातें हो रही हैं. What is that? That is just sympathy. That is what is sympathy. That is not empathy. That is basically what is sympathy. Okay? That is what is sympathy. That is not empathy. ये difference होता है sympathy और empathy. Now, in more formal terms, if we talk about empathy, in empathy there is understanding of. You will write this down, okay? It is what? Understanding of another's or others' feelings. Understanding of others' feelings. Here what happens is that people acknowledge but do not feel the same. People acknowledge but they do not feel the same. What is happening? What is happening is that what you will see here is that people acknowledge but they do not feel the same. People acknowledge but they are not going to do what? They are not going to feel the same. That is sympathy. That is sympathy. So it is just the knowledge of someone's pain. Here what is happening? It is feeling into. And what is happening here? It is feeling for. Here it involves feeling into. Here it involves feeling for. You feel for. You don't feel the same. You just feel for something. Here it involves, of course, perspective taking. It involves perspective taking. Here you can say it is more of being emotionally distant. It is about what? Being emotionally distant. What will this result into? Very likely, empathy translates into actions. Empathy does what? Empathy translates into actions. Translates into actions. But here, what happens? Here, sympathy does not translate into action. It does not what? It does not translate into action. Here, there is a translation into action, but that is not what you are going to see. Okay? That is not what you are going to see here. Yes. Is it clear? Is it clear now? If now I ask you again, I ask this again to you. What? My question to you is, what is better for a civil servant? Distant होने का मतलब है, emotionally distant होने का मतलब है, you don't feel the same. And you don't feel the same. That is what it is. Yes. According to you, which is more important? Is empathy more important? जब हम बोलते हैं अच्छा नहीं हुआ, तो क्या ये empathy है? जरूरी नहीं है. जरूरी नहीं है कि वो empathy हो. It is not necessary that it is empathy. ये जरूरी नहीं है. Emotionally distance meaning, it means that it is not something which, when you do not feel the same for others, you just acknowledge what they are feeling without feeling the same. Without feeling the same. That is what being emotionally distant means. civil servant should be empathetic and understanding. Yes, of course, it is about, for a civil servant, sympathy can be a self-centric emotion. For a civil servant, sympathy can be a self-centric emotion. And when I say it can be a self-centric emotion, what do I mean by that? Why am I saying that it could be self-centric? Because it could be self-centric because what exactly happens is that when you look at an individual when an individual has empathy, the individual, as if he's a civil servant, he's doing something about it. He's trying to do something about it. But when an individual has sympathy, it is just about telling yourself that I am not a bad person. It's just about telling yourself कि मैं बुरा नहीं. That is what sympathy does. Yeah. Okay. Let us move on. And now give a subheading here, right? The next subheading, right? Why is empathy important? Why is empathy important? Why is empathy important? Right. So there are some situations also where we feel bad and do not take. You feel bad does not lead to action. Possibly, but as a बहुत rarely होता है. There would definitely be some steps that you would definitely take. Okay. So why is empathy important? Yes, why is empathy important? Let us understand this one by one. Give us a subheading here and write. Why empathy is important or why it matters, and we will talk about it point wise. Right on. First point. Citizen-centric policy formulation. Citizen-centric policy formulation. Citizen-centric policy formulation. Citizen-centric policy formulation. Within this point, write down. Empathy helps policymakers. Empathy helps policymakers. Understand practical realities. Therefore, resulting into policy actions. Which effectively addresses situation. Full stop. Second point. Enhances public trust. Within this, you can write when officials listen and respond meaningfully. Respond meaningfully. When officials listen and respond meaningfully. Citizens feel respected. Citizens feel respected and heard. Building faith in governance. Building faith in governance. Full stop. Better service delivery. Empathetic officials. Can anticipate needs can anticipate needs, and navigate and anticipate needs, and navigate and anticipate needs, and navigate and anticipate needs, and navigate complex navigate complex complex social context social context social context, reducing grievances and exclusion, reducing grievances and exclusion, reducing grievances and exclusion. Full stop. Next, reduces social conflict, reduces social conflict, reduces social conflict. Within this point, right now, by appreciating diverse identities, by appreciating diverse identities, diverse identities and cultures, cultures. Empathy fosters, empathy fosters, empathy fosters social cohesion, social cohesion, and social cohesion. Empathy fosters social cohesion, social cohesion, and conflict resolution, and conflict resolution, conflict resolution. Full stop. And the last, improves ethical decision making, improves ethical decision making. Within this point, you can write empathy, empathy does not allow, does not allow, does not allow or rigid rule application, rigid rule application, rigid rule application with social with contextual, sorry, with contextual sensitivity, contextual sensitivity, contextual sensitivity, ensuring compassion without compromising fairness, compassion without compromising fairness. Full stop. Full stop. Okay, so these are the specific reasons why we require empathy. Now, before we get into the details of it, before we understand them, before we get into the details of all of this, what we have to take into consideration is the fact that there has been a question. Question has been asked by Himanshu that there are some situations also where we feel bad and do know that is there. By looking at others, it is not necessarily you having the capability of taking perspective of others. You are only acknowledging the emotion that others are right now feeling. So that could not necessarily be classified as empathy. It cannot be necessarily considered as what? It cannot be necessarily considered as empathy. It cannot necessarily be considered as empathy. Empathy, as we have already seen, it is about perspective taking. It is about understanding another's feelings. It is about when there are certain feelings that you have which ultimately results into what? Into certain actions. So what you are saying, Himanshu, is very likely sympathy, not necessarily empathy. Okay. You have a question. I feel for civil servants, sympathy is also essential in some ways. You feel sympathy is essential in some ways. See, I am not saying that sympathy is wrong. our discussion is what is more important. Is empathy more important or is sympathy more important? And in that context, we have agreed that it is basically empathy which is more important. How empathy translates into actions? Empathy translates into actions because you are so moved in that particular situation that you do what is required to ensure that the other individual, the problems that the other individual is feeling, the emotions that the other individual is feeling, those problems and those emotions you are able to address. That is what or how it translates into action. Okay. But I feel empathy is essential in some cases where decisions can be made just on the basis of empathy or being emotionally empathy in some cases may lead to not taking the right decision. That is not, there is a difference between what is empathy and what is being emotional. You are confusing the two. You are confusing the two, I think, Ankita. Being emotional or being too emotional may sometimes do what? May sometimes results into actions which are not necessarily correct. That may result into actions which are not necessarily correct. That is possible. It is possible that being too emotional may result into, but empathy is not about being too emotional. Empathy is about what? Empathy is about ensuring that you understand the perspective of others and you can understand the emotions that others are undergoing. But it does not necessarily mean that you have to be emotional. There are two different things. Okay. So sometimes emotions influence individuals' judgment adversely. Yes. But what you have to understand is that emotions also has a positive impact. So saying that emotions or assuming that emotions will always impact an individual adversely is wrong. वो भी गलत है. ठीक है? If someone have bad and criminal feeling and if we feel that they have bad intentions, is it included in empathy? No. No, of course, Anjali, it is not included in empathy. Can we say empathy results into good administration? Yes, of course, that is what we have just seen. That is exactly what we have just seen. We have seen that when it comes to the very idea, we have just seen that when it comes to the very idea of empathy results into citizen-centric policy formulation. What does it result into? It results into citizen-centric policy formulation. We have seen that empathy enhances public trust, results into better service delivery, reduces conflict. So we would definitely be correct if we assume that what empathy does is empathy results into better administration. We can definitely say that. Okay. You can correlate it even to emotional intelligence. As we know that empathy is one of the core criteria of emotional intelligence. It is one of the core criteria of emotional intelligence. Okay. Sir, sometimes when we heard of some inspiring stories, we are also moved that we feel so empathetic towards that person and wants to do better like him. That is not empathy. That is not empathy. That is motivation. Uma. That is motivation. That is not empathy. When you feel, okay. So now, give a subheading here and write importance of empathy in an organization. Give a subheading here. Write down importance of empathy in organization. Importance of empathy in organization. Importance of empathy in organization. And write down empathy creates. Importance of empathy in organization. And write down empathy creates better work environment. Empathy creates better work environment. Empathy creates better work environment. Second point, it results into increased productivity. It results into increased productivity. It results into increased productivity. Increased productivity. Next point. It increases commitment to work. Commitment to work. Commitment to work and satisfaction to individual workers. Commitment to work and satisfaction to individual workers. Individual workers. Full stop. reduces individual workers. Full stop. Next. Empathy reduces interpersonal conflicts. Interpersonal conflicts. Interpersonal conflicts. Full stop. Next. It results into better communication. Better communication. Better communication. Leading to reduced role conflict, reduced role conflict and role ambiguity. Role conflict reduced. Role conflict, reduced role conflict and role ambiguity. Role ambiguity. Full stop. Next. It enhances group dynamics. It enhances group dynamics. Group dynamics. In terms of cooperation. In terms of cooperation. In terms of cooperation. Next. Empathy is the cornerstone for moral character development. Moral character development. Moral character development. Next. It is also essential. It is also essential. Moral character development. Next. It is also essential. Moral character development. Next. It is also essential. It is also essential. It is also essential. It is also essential for working towards inclusiveness. For working towards inclusiveness. Inclusiveness in society. In society. In society. Inclusiveness. Working towards inclusiveness. For working towards inclusiveness. Inclusiveness. In society. In society. In society. And the last point. As an individual, we need empathy. We need empathy to survive and succeed. To survive and succeed in this complex world. In this complex world. Full stop. Now, before we move on, if you look at all these 3 points, all the points that we have discussed, if you have any problems in understanding, full stop, to survive and succeed in this complex world, in this complex world, full stop. Now, before we move on, if you look at all these 3 points, all the points that we have discussed, if you have any problems in understanding them, you last 3 points, but except for the last 3 points, if you have any queries, you can ask me, because I will be discussing these 3 points tomorrow. Ambiguity means things which are not clear. If things are not clear, it is said to be ambiguity. It increases productivity. No, it increases productivity in an organization because it results into more commitment. What does it do? It results into more commitment. It results into more commitment, and that is the reason why it does what? It improves productivity. It results into more commitment. You are more committed to the organization and to the organizational goals. 6 point. Group dynamics. Group dynamics means the relationship with the people that you are a part of. That is basically what it means. It reduces interpersonal conflicts because you are more aware about what others are feeling, the emotions that they are undergoing. That is why, that is what interpersonal conflict is. Okay? Okay? The empathy in an organization means between senior and subordinates. Between subordinates, between your colleagues, all of this, every group, every relationship we are talking about. Role ambiguity I have just explained. Role ambiguity means when you are not aware of your role. Okay? Dynamics in terms of cooperation. When people respect your emotions and you respect emotions of others, it results into better cooperation. जब लोग आपके बारे में समझते हैं और आप लोगों के emotions को समझते हैं, that is basically going to result in